Welcome everyone to a talk on Heraclitus. I will speak very freely and will say what comes to mind in this dark age. There's a new epoch on the horizon, which is rather obvious. And I've been trying to seek its sense and try to unearth its meaning in what is showing itself. It's of course, for now, impossible to grasp fully what is about to come. It might be a complete reversal of what usually is called globalization, but on the profound level, that means that we might stop thinking of that the planetary way that we lived might end. That might mean a certain return to other ways of being. Now, before I begin, please support me on Patreon. If you enjoy my videos, any amount you can spare helps me keep the lights on. There will be a link to my Patreon just down below, so please subscribe there, or if you'd rather, send me in any currency some support, some donation on PayPal. Thanks very much for that. I'm going to read fragment B53 by Heraclitus, which reads as follows in ancient Greek. Polymos paton men pater esti panton de Basileus, kai tous men theus edeixe tous de anthropus, tous men dulus e poiese tous de Eleutherus. And that means war, Polemos, is the father of everything. Panton men pater esti. War is the father of everything. He's the king of everything. Panton de Basileus. And some war he makes to gods, and others he makes men. And some he makes slaves, and some epoiese he lets become freed ones, Eleutherius, free men. Now, why would I read exactly this passage by Heraclitus? If war is the father of everything, then war is that process, that event by which history is, as it were, steered, almost organized, reorganized. And what we are living through could be thought of as a primordial war. There aren't any clear enemy lines. There aren't nation states fighting. Those are the wars of the era of the Peace of Westphalia, with its greatest outbreaks in the 20th century with the two world wars, with World War I and World War II and all that ensued by them, with the death of the nation state, and with globalization, with a planetary man, a planetary human being, planetary free-hopping so-called sovereign individual. A war between nation states had become ever more tired. It was impossible to fight proper nationalistic wars. It's been attempted, but they all failed miserably. And war is not just between enemies. War is, if you follow Heraclitus, the father of everything, then war is something archaic, something primordial. a primordial event, a primordial occurring, which arranges and rearranges, and, as Heraclitus says, turns some into gods and some into men, and makes some slaves and some he makes free. So if what we're living through is a war in this primordial, deep historical sense of a true apocalypse, in the sense of apocalyptein, that something is uncovering itself, something's being unearthed, something is coming to an end, and that something else, of course, is opening up already, and we don't quite know yet what that is, then, if that all is the case, then history is right now being rearranged. And we better begin to try and understand, try and grasp that which is occurring, and rid ourselves of the certainties that we believed to have. I've said in other videos of the past week, and this is something I've been thinking about for a long time before. For example, at a talk that I gave at an event that Leszek Zalewski and I organized in Berlin, which was all called Ruinous Apocalypse. This was last October. I gave a talk where I said that the subject is collapsing. Subjectivity itself is collapsing as it's at its utmost maximum, its utmost limit. There is something, so subjectivity, you have to understand, subjectivity is an extremely broad category. It means it's not just you and your personal thoughts about something. The proper subjectivism means that the subject is the underlying ground of everything that is. And we as human beings tap into this groundedness, so we deem ourselves to be the ground of everything that is. So it's an extremely inflated, bloated way of being for mankind, of which all of us are just, to speak metaphysically for a second, we're just instantiations of this. And when this reaches its maximum, when it's at its utmost capacity, it's bound to collapse. Do not forget that last year, totally unrelated to this, all we heard all the time was that there will be a total extinction of everything. People said people held extinction rebellions. By the way, here you might have it, your extinction. And others ran around the globe and protested climate change. Well, now we're faced with what feels to many like impending doom. It won't probably be the extinction of all of humanity. But if it is as grand an event as it currently appears to be, then history right now is, to speak in a bit of a banal cliche, is in the making. And it's extremely, of course, it's accelerating as well as everything is coming together. But the reason for why this can happen also is that the subject has made itself the ground of everything. The human being has made himself the subject, and then the subject has made itself the ground for everything that is. And this inflated way of being, which no longer knows any limitations or boundaries, is now being haunted by a non-intelligent machinery called a virus. While at the same time, of course, there was no longer a proper grounding of man. There was a loss of home, a severe sensation of alienation in modernity. For all I can sense at the moment, this might perhaps be the end of modernity. This might be the end of Cartesian self-certainty. In 1925, Heidegger says that the ego cogito sum is too narrow. You cannot make sense of yourself simply by saying, I think, therefore I am. And hence he says, sum moribundus, I am because I'm towards my death. And this, Heidegger thinks, can take us out into Dasein, into this proper, profound structure, which means that we're always already in the world. We're being in the world, we're being with others, and not isolated, alienated, consumer subjects, which is where the Gestell wants us, of course. Gestell wants you in a pot. So if we follow Heraclitus, then we are in a primordial, deep historical war in which gods will be born and new slaves and new freed men will be born also. And aside from Heraclitus, I will mention again the halcyon bird, the little kingfisher, the little ice bird, which sees the horror to come, breeds in 2 weeks over solstice when the sea is still, knowing that, and by the way, the nests are on the still sea, on the still ocean, on the sea. And then seeing what is to come, what is inevitably to come, the halcyon bird has already overcome this. Nietzsche very often speaks of the halcyon, or the halcyonic tone in his writings. And I would simply say, perhaps something that's already obvious to anyone anyways, is that if these certainties are, if no certainties no longer, because this is the point that's being made on the news, for example, sometimes, or on Twitter feeds, or whatever you follow, is that certain certainties that we've had, for example, you can hear politicians say we've never had to go through anything like this in our country, certainly not since the war, etc. Perhaps this means that this kind of absolute self-certainty, where everything is a model, right? And you can just apply this model to anything, just kind of as if in a Procrustes bed, nature has to fit into this model of the world that you have, and if it doesn't, then you'll just flatten the earth. Perhaps this is the end of subjectivity. Perhaps this is the end of the Cartesian paradigm. It might be it. And it might mean a return of true history, but at the same time it holds within itself the danger, it bears within itself the danger of a total forgetting. So I think what must happen now, because some people talk about this, where the sense makers, the philosophers and all this, those who seek sense, those who see sense, right? The philosopher, who's a philosopher? A philosopher is someone who sees, properly sees. We're seeing as much as staring at or watching something. No, seeing is active. The philosopher sees perhaps what is to come from that which has been. We must return again to that which has been, to that which is old. Tito on enai. We must return to that which was being, to quote Aristotle. So this is a time to engage with philosophia, to engage with proper philosophy, not this autistic mind idiocy of paradoxes and the modern logistics. Out the window, all of it. It's time to get rid of analytical philosophy. It's not philosophy. It has got nothing to do with thinking. It's the exact opposite of thinking. It's unbearable. Do you know what analytical means? Analyo means to dissolve. We don't need dissolving at this point. We need We need thinking that can bring everything together again, and that can also really and truly affirm that which is amor fati in this sense, and guide through this polemos, this war of deep history that's now breaking out, and then profoundly reconnect and return to that which has been, to build the next world, to truly build a human world again, because the world of capital is not human. The world of unrest, of total work, to quote my friend Andrew Taggart, isn't human. It's not fit for human beings. All the best to you in these dark times for some, or maybe most. And please subscribe to the channel. Please support me on Patreon as well. And spread the videos. Thank you very much indeed. All the best. See you soon.